readers, and welcome to part 13 of the Great Hunt reread. 13 is appropriate because we have some Black Aja shenanigans to discuss today. But first, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping. You'll probably notice this video is going to be released on a Friday instead of the usual Monday for a reread. That worked for me this week because I have found that 1 week is a little bit tight of a turnaround to get a reread video out unless I'm not doing any other content for the channel. You might have also noticed that if I have more than one video to release in a week, it's usually Monday and Friday. Sometimes the Friday goes to Thursday if Watt on Prime releases some news on a Wednesday that I want to cover. But, going forward, there's only going to be a few more of these rereads in The Great Hunt. They'll either be on a Monday or a Friday. I might be able to do it in 2, but realistically, if I don't want to try to pack too much into the videos, it's probably going to be divided into 3 more installments. So that's what you can expect. And now let's get to the chapters. Chapter 38, Practice. Egwene has been 13 weeks in the White Tower, and she's practicing channeling in her room, which she's not supposed to do without supervision. Nynaeve is there as well, pacing angrily, but although Nynaeve is accepted, she's not supposed to teach anyone. Min is also there, and she teases Egwene about Galad. Egwene pretends for a minute that she's not interested, but then she cracks and admits that she can't help staring at Galad. Min warns her that she can tell what Galad is like, that he would hurt someone for the greater good and probably wouldn't even notice. But she also tells Egwene that Galad is interested in her. The door bangs open and Elaine enters to tell them that King Galdrian is dead and there will be a war of succession in Cairhien. She also ran into Logain on the way, who she can't help feeling sorry for. Logain makes Egwene think of Rand, and how she hasn't dreamt of him since her first few weeks in the tower, as if he has ceased to exist. But the thought of Rand being gentled like Logain sends a chill through her, and Egwene feels guilty for thinking about Galad. Elaine wants to know why Nynaeve is in a rage, and Min explains that she was sent to Shiriam for clouting another accepted on the ear for insulting her. This makes Nynaeve burst into anger, which causes the door to fly open accidentally with the power. Elaine and Egwene go back to practicing as a way of ignoring Nynaeve and Min, apologizing to each other and forgiving each other, but Nynaeve orders them to stop. Egwene, Elaine, and Nynaeve all admit to being terrified of using the power, but of not ever wanting to stop. Elaine asks Min to read them, and Min says she doesn't like to read friends, but she suddenly sees something around all of them that she hasn't seen before. All 3 of them will soon be in danger. None of them want to talk about it. Elaine changes the subject and tells Min she should try putting on a dress to attract her brother Gawain's notice. Min says she won't change the way she dresses for a man, and she likes being able to pass for a boy. The door swings open again, and Liandrin Sedai enters. She demands to know why Nynaeve is there, but then orders Min and Elaine to leave. She tells Egwene and Nynaeve that the 3 young men from their village are in trouble again, but that the 2 of them may be able to help. When pressed repeatedly by Nynaeve, she finally says that they are still being hunted by Shael Ghul, but she won't say more. She tells them that in order to help them, they will have to come with her to Toman Head. They agree to meet her in the Ogier Grove that evening, though she tells them to tell no one else. She leaves them with a warning about the Black Aja. Nynaeve and Egwene are discussing whether Liandrin could have been lying when Min and Elaine return. They have heard everything through a hole in the wall from Elaine's next-door room, and they are resolved to go with them. Nynaeve and Egwene try to convince Elaine not to go, but Min says she is part of the pattern as well, and as connected to Rand and the others as the rest of them are. She won't tell Elaine any more about how she is connected. Nynaeve moves on to the practicalities of their journey, while Egwene worries about Rand. Chapter 39, Flight from the White Tower. The 4 women make their way through the tower. Egwene and Nynaeve and Elaine are wearing fine riding dresses to pass for petitioners to the White Tower, while Min, in her usual garb, carries their saddlebags, posing as a servant. They dodge anyone that might be able to recognize them. When they reach the stable, Nynaeve tries to intimidate the groom into saddling all of their horses without question. He tells them that Leandrin told him only to expect 2, and Nynaeve responds that he'll need Leandrin's healing if he doesn't do as told, which he does. Elaine hands him some money and a smile. They are not stopped at the gate, and they make their way without event through the city and to the grove. When Leandrin sees all 4 of them, she is angry, but Elaine explains that she and Min overheard, and that they want to help Rand and the others as well. Leandrin says that she had made arrangements for them to be taken care of, but since they are here, they may come. When Elaine questions this, Leandrin explains that since they are known to be friends with Egwene and Nynaeve, they might not have lived the night otherwise if they had remained behind and the Black Aja had gotten a hold of them. Leandrin leads them to a waygate, and though Elaine is hesitant and Min curses Rand under her breath, they all follow Egwene through the waygate, with Leandrin coming through last. Once she is in the ways, she simply tosses the line of the pack horse to Min and leaves them from guiding to guiding without a word and only a terse answer if spoken to. When they stop on an island for the night, Leandrin finally tells them that it will take most of 2 days to reach Tomon Head. Leandrin keeps to herself, not wanting their company, but Egwene asks her what they will do if they encounter the Black Wind. Leandrin just says she will deal with it. Min says the pattern has a lot to answer for once Elaine explains what the Black Wind is, and Egwene reminds Min that she didn't have to come. Min turns the conversation around and asks Egwene what she will do if Rand doesn't marry her, if he marries someone else, like Elaine or Min. Egwene thinks about Rand going mad and tries to speak lightly when she says she will not marry him and advises the others not to think of it either. Elaine doesn't buy her indifference and tells Egwene that she would have herself to blame if she tosses him away and Elaine defies everyone and goes after him herself. That night, Egwene sleeps fitfully and dreams of a man with eyes of fire again. For the remainder of the trip, Leandrin pushes them as quickly as possible until finally they arrive at a waygate and Leandrin says she has taken them where they must go. Chapter 40, Damane. Egwene exits the waygate on Bella and is surprised to see a strange group of people waiting for them. She doesn't know who they are yet, but there are 50 Shanchan soldiers, 2 Damane, 4 Soldam, and finally, a woman on a palanquin who has a crest of black hair and long lacquered fingernails. Leandrin ignores Egwene's question about who the strangers are, and she approaches the woman on the palanquin, calling her High Lady Surath. Surath says they must be done quickly, and both Egwene and Nynaeve are ignored when they ask what is going on. Leandrin indicates that she has told Surath about Egwene and Nynaeve and introduces Elaine as another. A man tries to seize Min and Elaine, and a collar is snapped around Egwene's neck. She tries and fails frantically to remove it, and then punches the woman who now holds her leash in the face. Egwene staggers as she feels like a hard blow on her own face. When Egwene becomes aware again, she sees that Nynaeve and Elaine are gone, and Min is nearby, kneeling groggily. The woman who now holds Egwene's leash, named Rena, speaks to her in a friendly tone and tells Egwene that she is now a Damane, a leashed one, and she is a Suldam, a holder of the leash. Anything a Suldam feels, a Damane will feel twice over. Egwene does not give her name when asked, and instead asks Leandrin why she is letting this happen. Rena says a Damane must do as asked immediately, and Egwene feels stinging, burning pain from head to toes as punishment. When asked again, Egwene gives her name, and Rena pats her head like a dog. Egwene asks Min if she is okay, and gets a weak nod in response. But when Egwene sees lightning flashing, she smiles, remembering that Nynaeve and Elaine are still free. Leandrin and Surath are talking about their mutual master, who has commanded that Egwene and Nynaeve be taken over the Arith Ocean when the Shanchan return. Sura threatens to leash Leandrin herself, but Leandrin simply embraces the source and says that their master will ensure that Surath pays the price if she fails, and she returns through the waygate. The man who has captured Min asks for permission to kill her for the offense of cutting him. Surath assents, but Egwene begs for her to be spared. Egwene feels the pain again and falls face down into the dirt, until Surath approaches and gets Egwene to agree to work hard and learn if she spares Min and allows her to visit occasionally. Both Egwene and Min are put on their horses. As the party moves off, Rena tells Egwene that being spoken to by Surath was an honor, but that since Egwene spoke out of turn, she is hit by unseen blows. When the blows stop, Egwene still feels the pain, though her skin is unmarked. Rena tells her that any time a Damane is punished, it is always her own fault. Damane are tools to be used and must anticipate what their Sul'dam want. Egwene receives permission to ask Rena some questions, but she won't answer the question about what Leandrin and Surath were talking about, since she says it is none of Egwene's business. And furthermore, Damane can be punished for questions like this with a loss of tongue or hands if they get out of line. Egwene speaks openly about how horrible this is, which Rena tolerates, but she only gives Egwene some information about what the collar and leash are, called Idam, where they came from and how they work. Finally, Rena starts to test Egwene, asking her to burn a tree in the distance. Egwene claims it is too far, but both Rena and the other Sul'dam can tell that she never tried, and so Egwene is punished. Egwene tries to use saidar to hurt Rena, but she cannot, and she feels pain herself until she releases it. Egwene's punishment is long, while Min screams and is punished herself. Rena tells Egwene that she will be one of the best Damane once her spirit is molded. Nynaeve looks around cautiously from her saddle. She hears someone nearby and tries to channel, but she cannot now that her anger is gone and she is afraid for her friends. But it is only Elaine. Elaine thinks that Egwene and Min didn't get away, and she is berating herself for running herself. Nynaeve scolds her for being foolish. If she hadn't run, she would be a prisoner or dead herself. Elaine doesn't know how they will help their friends when the strangers have women who can channel, but Nynaeve says they will go to Falma and scoffs over Elaine's worry that they won't have enough money for their needs. But she says it will be dangerous and asks if Elaine is sure, but Elaine doesn't hesitate. They both agree that Leandrin might have been lying about Rand and agree to be cautious as they head to Falma. The remainder of this video contains spoilers for the entire Wheel of Time series. If you do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk. When Egwene mentions that she has not dreamt of Rand in many weeks, I thought that was really interesting because it must line up with the period of time that Rand lost when he traveled by Portal Stone. During that time, he isn't really in the world, and so apparently Egwene can't have true dreams of him. This also reinforces that Egwene's dreams of Rand are prophetic. They are not ordinary dreams. I found the little bit about Gawain maybe being interested in Min but put off by her clothing really odd. Was it hinting at maybe Gawain pursuing Min, but that never happened? I do think at this point Robert Jordan maybe was not planning on Gawain and Egwene yet. He seemed to be headed towards Galad and Egwene. And Min doesn't seem interested at all, so it probably wasn't really going anywhere anyway. Now, I'm not going to criticize Gawain here because this is Elaine speaking for him, and he might not really think this. But I'll save my criticism for Elaine. Don't tell your friend to change how she dresses to attract your brother. Just don't do it. Leandrin. In the first two of these chapters, we don't have anything definitive yet to say that she is Black Aja, but I still found a few suspicious things. I found it very odd that she did not respond to Nynaeve failing to call her Leandrin Sedai, because we know how important deference is to her from her POV earlier in this book. Her bringing up the Black Aja unbidden is also a very unusual thing for an Aes Sedai to do. And when she said that Elaine and Min would be taken care of if they had stayed behind, that is ominous. Technically, we don't have absolute confirmation, even in the third chapter, that she is Black Ajah, but the fact that we hear her and Surath talking about their mutual master, who gave orders for Nynaeve and Egwene to be taken over the Arth Ocean, the fact that Liandrin took them out of the tower in secret, brought them to the Shan-Chan, fully knowing they would be made Damane, there's really no other way to interpret this. It also fits in that Liandrin has orders that even she does not fully understand because she was given them at the Dark Friends social in the prologue. Egwene does not quite figure it out here, but she does flash to her image of Ishamael, who she has seen in her dreams when she is picturing who their mutual master might be. So she's kind of on the right track. There are a couple names dropped in the Shan-Chan chapter that will be relevant later on. The Towers of Midnight are mentioned when Rena is telling Egwene about the Aes Sedai who invented the Idam to try to get in the good graces of one of Archer Hawkwing's sons before she was collared herself. The Court of the Nine Moons is also relevant when we later hear the prophecy that Mat will marry the daughter of the Nine Moons. There are hints that the Suldam can channel themselves because they are able to sense when a woman has embraced the source and tell whether or not a woman has channeled even when they're not wearing a bracelet connected to her. We are starting to see a little bit more here of Elaine and Min and what makes them who they are. We see that they're both enormously brave and willing to risk themselves to help their friends and Rand. There is pattern involvement here, of course, but again, the pattern doesn't change who someone is. It uses the right people for what is needed. So we're starting to see why Elaine and Min are some of the right people to help Rand, in part because of their bravery and loyalty. The other thing that I appreciate about both characters is that they tend to bring some lightness and humor to whatever situations they are in, while Nynaeve and Egwene tend to be more serious. Nynaeve can be very funny, but it's typically unintentional. Min in particular is very wry and knows how to deliver difficult things in a way that it can be taken well. We also see that she has good judgment about what to say and what not to say. In hindsight, she knows some things here that she doesn't say yet because it's not a good time yet. If she told her viewing about the women who would love Rand, it might interfere with the growing bonds among these four women, which would be a mistake. So she's very wise and patient in that regard. Min may be blunt when she needs to be, but she also knows how not to be when necessary. Much as I adore Nynaeve, she does not have that ability. Nynaeve is refreshing, though, for her pure honesty, even when it isn't pretty. Elaine, meanwhile, has learned the lesson that honey, along with a stick, goes a long way. And so we see the first of that contrast between her and Nynaeve. Elaine knows that a little sweetness, along with honesty, improves the whole situation. We also see Elaine doubting her own bravery, and I was glad to see Nynaeve cut through that nonsense and convince Elaine that what she did is right. It's always easier to see in someone else, but Elaine responded well to this from Nynaeve. Now, I'll save a lot of my discussion of Egwene for future chapters, but we do see that her instinct to resist is strong. The horror of what is being done to her and what is being done to Min brings out all of her fight. She happens to be up against something truly crushing, but we'll see more of how she responds in future chapters. I have to talk about Damane and the Shan-Chan because, yikes. I don't think I'm going to be saying anything shocking here, I hope, but it is an important theme in this series and in other fantasy series, whenever you have magic users who are capable of great destruction. You also then have the idea introduced of other people trying to control those magic users, and it's often framed as for their own good or for the world's own good. In the Wheel of Time, this is an especially interesting question because of what happens to male channelers when Saidin was tainted. In this case, suddenly you have half of all the channelers in the world on a path towards insanity and destruction, and something did have to be done because people were literally dying and the world was literally breaking. But what happens here with the Shanchan also shows you how you can end up on a slippery slope. So to me, I think the root of the problem and how the Shanchan ended up treating women channelers this way is that they have removed humanity from people who can channel. Who knows how it began, but it's likely that the progression of seeing women as dangerous animals that need to be controlled and can also be exploited wasn't a switch that flipped on day one. It probably was a progression that began with them thinking they were doing something for the greater good. So it's easy to look at what the Shanchan do and say that's horrible and inhuman and I would never think like that or do what they do. And it is horrible. Robert Jordan really drives that home with every line that Rena says. We find out that Damane experience intense physical punishment for the slightest infractions. The Shanchan think nothing of removing body parts as punishment. The Damane are to have no thoughts, questions, intentions of their own. It is driven home in every way that they are things, they are owned, that their humanity is systematically removed from them. Rena even notes that it is best when they start with a strong will like Egwene. Presumably they like the idea of turning that will into fervent servitude, which they would then reward by treating them like well-behaved pets. So we recoil in disgust. But it's also worth noting that treating male channelers as if they don't have humanity by trying to deal with them in a way that does not protect them as much as possible is also wrong, and it can lead to this kind of thinking. This didn't happen in all cultures, but ultimately the whole world did fail at finding the best way to deal with male channelers in a way that still acknowledged their humanity and that something horrible was done to them and that there should be an attempt to protect them as much as possible. And in the case of the Shanchan, they were willing to discount the humanity of male channelers, and they were also willing to discount the humanity of female channelers. I should also note that there is a military and therefore economic advantage to the Shanchan in being able to control women who can channel. And there's also a fundamental doublethink involved when they decide that the women who hold the power themselves are not capable of judging how to use that power. But we're going to let other people decide how to control it. What makes the Soldam, or more importantly, the people who own the Soldam, more capable of judging how to use the power? Nothing. They're just people too. But if you decide that a group of people who has power are not actually people, then you can justify exploiting their power, and the empire prospers as a result. Bottom line, it's a sad fact of humanity that we are capable of seeing other groups of people as lacking in humanity, and then using that as a justification for them being treated as lesser, or for other groups benefiting from their exploitation. It is hard to transition from that to something funny, but let's give it a go. Even though we don't actually see it here, I can't help laughing at the way Min describes how women respond to Galad. Green sisters pretending to check on their warders so they can watch him practice, even the cooks and maids coming to watch him. I wonder how aware of this Galad is. If he's like his brother Rand, he's probably absurdly ignorant of it, but I bet he knows and he just doesn't care.
I am aware of the effect I have on women.
Let me know in the comments, guys, how much were you expecting this Leandrin reveal when you first got it? We'd also kind of been building up to finding out exactly what was going on with the Damane. So what was your first reaction to that? I'll most likely be covering chapters 41 through 43 in the next installment. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, and I'll see you next time.